Well, welcome to Radio Talks, Creating Art in Uncertain Times. Today is a co-production of WTJU 91.1 FM and WXTJ 100.1 FM. My name is Nathan Moore. I manage WTJU, and we are recording today, so folks can go back and watch this again, or hopefully we'll share it with the world, and thousands upon thousands of people will enjoy this on YouTube. In the face of ongoing health and social crises across the country, local music has faced a reckoning lately. WXTJ and WTJU are here today with a panel of Charlottesville-area musicians to discuss what it's like to be creating in a time of unrest and unease. And we're also going to hear how some of our community members are responding to the times. Quick little bit of housekeeping. This is part of a series that we do at WTJU called Radio Talks, where the radio talks. No, we talk about music and radio and sort of local culture here in Charlottesville. Once a month. Our next one, they're always on the final Friday of a month, ever since June anyway. And we're going to do one in September on the 25th. It's going to be themed around jazz, local jazz. And so you can mark your calendar for the September 25th at 4 p.m. on that. And then another little quick bit of housekeeping. This is just a plain old meeting, not a webinar, so do please keep yourself muted. If you've got questions or comments, though, just type them right into the Zoom group chat there, and Molly is going to be monitoring those, and I'll also keep an eye on them as we go. Otherwise, glad to have you all here. Thanks for coming. I'm going to introduce, and really she'll be with you taking over moderating the rest of the hour, Annie Parnell. She's the co-director of WXTJ this year, along with co-director Molly Strachler. So Annie, take it away.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Annie. I'm, talking to y'all from here in Charlottesville. I just moved in a few days ago, so I'm still sort of getting used to being back, so that's cool. I'm really excited to be moderating this call and getting the chance to talk to you all today. This is the first time I've ever moderated a panel, so you'll have to forgive me if it's a little, it may be a little bit of a learning curve, but I think we're gonna have a nice time. We've got some really cool panelists here. I'm really excited to hear what all of them have to say about everything that's going on right now. We've got Annie Carson, who is a performance artist and a UVA faculty member. Everyone I know who's taken one of his classes recommends it 100%, so I'm really excited to see what we all have to say. Remy St. Clair should be along in a bit. He's in charge of 9 Pillars Hip-Hop Cultural Fest. And then we've got Harli Saxon from Harli and the House of Jupiter, which I have been listening to nonstop ever since we got the lineup for this panel set up. I've been really feeling it lately. And Valentin Vila from Ceterus, who is joined by Graydon Brock. So yeah, if you all wanted to get started, the first question I have is just a little bit of an icebreaker. I was curious to hear what music you've all been listening to lately. This is definitely an interesting time. I think a lot of people are finding kind of solace in being able to listen to old favorites or discover new tunes. So I don't know, Val and I almost said Val and Ceterus. Val and Graydon, you two look like you're thinking over there if you want to start off.
So I've been kind of jumping on the, and I see Jacob Baker already put it on the, or sent it to me privately here, but basically on the folk train, been trying to get onto my bluegrass scene a little bit since I'm living here in Charlottesville. And there was this woman that I discovered, Elizabeth Cotton, who basically came up with this form of picking, who eventually Travis took over, and then everybody called it Travis picking because white man. But I'm trying to really represent Elizabeth here, and I've started to really like her. But yeah, that's me.
My recent music has not been honestly, it's been harder for me to listen to music regularly than it has been to make music regularly. It's like Mario Kart music because that's interesting to me these days, and it's stuff that I haven't listened to before. It's nothing big.
Wow, nice. Well, yeah, I've certainly also had a little bit of a bluegrass phase in quarantine. We were watching the Ken Burns Country documentary series, me and my family, so I got really into it for a little while. Harli, what about you? What have you been listening to lately?
I've been focusing on comfort music. It's a lot like comfort food. It's those albums that you go back to that you've been listening to since your childhood, and they provide you with a sense of comfort, a sense of home. And incidentally, one of those albums for the past few years for me has been Shrimp Life by Ray Shrimmer. So actually, before we got on here, I was listening to a couple tracks from that album, and then I put on some Al Green, because why not Al Green? But mainly, you know, we've been moving, so I've been unpacking, and I've just been leaving the music choice up to the universe. Where that's what I do, where I put all my Pandora stations on shuffle and just pray for the best. And it's been playing like a lot of Outkast, a lot of Portishead, a lot of weird ass like synth metal, like Children of Bodom and stuff like that. So I go around everywhere, but it's all comfort music to me.
Nice. Yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean with comfort music. I've definitely been turning to some old favorites lately. AD Carson, what about you?
Also, thank you for inviting me here. But I have been, I think for a while it was really difficult to listen to anything. D-Smoke's, like the Black Habits, it's been something that I return to a lot. I had a student recommend Amalu, and I've been listening to that, and Anderson .Paak, I imagine. Those are the ones that I keep going back to. I did make a playlist that I kind of like, which is, you know, a bunch of older stuff. It's like Method Man and Marvin Gaye and Evelyn Champagne King, you know, like just runs the gamut, so.
Very cool. Very cool. Nice. So I guess the first kind of big question that I wanted to ask y'all is just getting to know how the current events have sort of influenced what you're putting out and maybe the creative process that's gone into it. I know that's probably, there's a pretty unique difficulty of sort of this time of coronavirus with making music together in groups of people, which is something that y'all who are part of bands, I think, are certainly feeling and trying to get music together and trying to, like, you know, figure out how to make that happen these days. So I don't know if anyone had, you know, like a specific experience with trying to. I know Ceterus, y'all just put out some new music, and if you want to say anything about what that was like, or Harli, go ahead.
Yeah, so we actually started recording, we went to the studio with our EP in January and February, and it pretty much hit like right during the production phase. He had all the tracks laid down, but we didn't really get to kind of be there for the creative mixing phase. So that kind of bummed us out, but then that kind of meant that we got to do a lot more creative mixing, you know, back home when we were actually able to do that. Yeah, that was a bit of a bummer when that happened, but that just meant that, you know, there was a little bit less collaboration on that. That didn't mean that our producer was like any worse on it, because that was really solid. Yeah, the release was fine. It just really sucks not being able to promote it with shows, because that was also on the slate too, big time, and really haven't been able to do that, but still been doing all right. And, you know, our social media following is solid. So there's nothing, you know, no disappointments there. It's just, we wish we could have gotten, you know, a little bit more in the studio and really gotten to use all of those resources in that time. That's kind of it.
Yeah, well, I know what you mean. It's definitely, I've been missing live music too, and I don't even put anything out. So yeah, yeah. I mean, Harli, I know that you've been. I think I saw like some video content that you were putting out on your website, kind of talking about what's going on right now. If you had anything to say about that.
So, my creative process recently, personally, has been kind of polar. I've been going back and forth a lot, like my energy between feeling really motivated and really inspired by everything that I'm seeing in the world, and then also feeling a lot of weight and feeling like I don't have the energy to create as much as I would like to. Towards the beginning of the quarantine, I like locked myself in a room for 11 hours with our other guitarist, Jonathan, and just recorded a track, all the instruments, all the voices, everything myself for 11 hours straight. And I put that up on my SoundCloud, which is just something that I kind of dabble in here and there when I'm feeling really rough. But you know, I've already said everything that I need to say through music. You've been listening to the band, so you know that it's all about the message. And with the band, currently we're not really in a stagnant place, but we're in a place of opening up this great new chapter. And I have been feeling like in that I don't want to detract from the social issues that we see present right now. I don't want to detract from the cause. I don't want to bring any attention away from people focusing on the fact that we are literally at war right now. So I feel like it would be inappropriate for me as an artist to be using this time to promote myself when there are so many other more important things in the world to be promoting. Like I said, I've already said everything that I had to say before all this went down.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are feeling that tension, even sort of like, you know, like private users of social media I've seen have been really trying to make an effort to like use the space they take up to kind of like give platforms to sort of the important messages rather than kind of their own stuff. It's definitely like, it's definitely tricky to be, I think, producing right now and to be creating anything, because I've, you know, spoken or heard about so many people who, you know, are doing really great work and doing really cool things, but don't want to take that attention away from everything else that's going on.
And you know, I miss performing just as much as the next person. I've had a few virtual spots going on here and there. Towards the beginning, we did a live stream from the Sake Brewery as the band, and then most recently with my duo project with Rochelle Claiborne called Perfect Storm, we did one of the live stream series sessions at the Jefferson Theater. And you know, it was fun. It was a good little escape, and it was therapeutic. But it was also like, this really doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. I think a lot of people are kind of grappling with that as well. The kind of feeling of even just sort of like, you know, the kind of, I've seen sort of remote concerts happening, and they definitely don't feel like, you know, or look like what they kind of used to. So I think it's definitely something we're going to be like, I think this is going to really change the kind of way that we consume and consider music, everything that's happening right now, and just the like limitations on being together.
It's not just music, it's everything. Everything is changing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think so. I just released an album called "I Used to Love to Dream," and it was. I think that it's maybe related to what Harli said, or in a certain way, because the album, I did it with the University of Michigan Press, and it was, I mean, while I was working with them, the album is written kind of like set in Decatur, Illinois, which is where I'm from, and like looking back at that place and at that past from Charlottesville. And it was written during a really difficult time, but also trying to make these very specific arguments about like what home sounds like, or what we conceive home to be through these kind of like ways that we might signify sonically. And when the pandemic started, I knew, or I felt the album was probably, or they told me that the album would not come out until 2021. My music is always about what's going on wherever I am. And I'm always trying to speak to whatever issues might exist. Sadly, the issues that exist now existed yesterday and the day before and 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 50 years ago. And, you know, like we can sadly predict that tomorrow and the day after and in a year and in 5 years and in 10 years, which kind of also sadly means that whenever I released the album, it was going to be about what is going on outside right now. And I don't know, it's heavy to sit with, but I also felt, you know, during a lot of this time, it's not really appropriate for me to be telling people to listen to this artistic rendition of this thing that I definitely felt whenever it was going on, while there are people out in the street right now going through the thing that I hoped whenever I wrote, you know, like that piece at whatever time, we wouldn't be going through anymore, because, you know, like I think that I'm writing because of hope. I hope that that's, why I'm writing. Anyhow, I've tried to give myself projects to keep my mind busy. Things that, like I want to write, but I don't want to share, or even using the platform that we have to be able to engage with artists in like more intimate ways where we're able to answer questions and kind of chat about what's going on or what we're thinking and how we're feeling. But more than anything, it's just been tough. It's been difficult. It's been heavy. And I've tried to give myself the space to not be productive, to not be making anything, and to not be producing anything, but just to sit with the feelings and to feel through the feelings and to, like be.
Amen.
Or, so that's it.
Yeah. Say a little more about some of the projects that you're not releasing but are sort of keeping occupied with, though. That sounds really like an interesting.
So I did a project that was like just pure fun with, a couple friends. We were trying to make music, like licensing music. It's just like clean music that you might hear like in a TV show or something. We did it over the course of a week, and it was me and a couple guys from, one friend from Philly, another friend from Chicago, and the producer is in London. And we just, were sending tracks back and forth, and we knocked that out. I just did a track this past week with a reggae artist in Hawaii, and that probably will be released. The others, people will hear them. They just won't know. I hope they won't know that it was me. But just doing whatever I can to also claim a little bit of joy through all of, these processes, and to work with friends who, kind of have a value of the joy in the process of just making stuff. And so then we're not having to consider who we're going to sell this to or how we're going to sell it, or even trying to market it anywhere online. We're just engaging in the practice. And that's the closest thing that I could get to hanging out with folks in ways that feel similar to what it might feel like to jam with somebody.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's, it definitely is. I think that I personally have picked up a lot of just weird little quarantine hobbies just to kind of have something to be doing with all this sort of extra time. Even just, I feel all of my transition time between things like classes and work is pretty much gone now. It's just kind of going from one Zoom call to the next Zoom call and just sort of sitting on my couch all day. So I've definitely also been looking for things to kind of keep me busy. Well, some of what we were talking about a little earlier kind of ties into the next question that I wanted to ask, which is pretty broad, but I think we'll have some good things to say about it. I wanted to know what role you all think the local music community has in times of crisis like this, whether that's sort of, the social tensions that we've been talking about that have been present for so long and have often been kind of amplified through the arts, or whether that's the health crises that are happening right now, where so many people are turning to music to feel some kind of connection. So I don't know if anyone feels strongly about taking the lead and saying what they kind of think that it means to be sort of a local artist right now.
I think as kind of like a local artist, we all share some responsibility about bringing some of these issues to the local scene. I think especially now that music is a lot more kind of digitized and all over the internet, it's easy for someone in music to know what's going on around the country, but someone who is kind of just like a Charlottesville local and doesn't really tune into world news or anything else is happening in the country, maybe only through their local bands or some artists are they going to hear about issues happening in Philly, Detroit, New York City, other places. And so, yeah, I think we kind of have a responsibility to put that in their face so that they know what's going on, and hopefully they can hop on the train to do something about it.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's a lot of the platform that we've kind of garnered up up to this point is kind of we're kind of cashing it all in. We got to kind of use the fact that we've gained a certain amount of following, and that these are the people that are going to be our outlets for whatever we create, or the social ideas that we're trying to present to. Big cashing in period, less kind of amassing, less of a snowball, more of spilling the snowball.
Yeah, no, I've been seeing that you all have been sort of really using specifically your social media platforms to kind of elevate the sort of important voices right now. That's stuff to see. Well, Harli, did you unmute for a second there?
Hi. Yeah. One thing, art has always been reflective of the times, right? So that's a big deal. And that's something that we see manifest itself in a smaller scale in the local music scene, in the local communities, and also on a much larger scale globally. Secondly, Charlottesville is segregated as hell when it comes to the music scene. Like, really, let's be honest. Let's talk about how cliquey it is. Let's talk about how there's not enough representation for hip hop, how there's not enough representation for R&B, how there's not enough representation for Black music overall, and whatever that means, because there are Black people and there's Black influence in every genre of music. We have been forced to force ourselves into the music scene. And sometimes the resistance is so much, and this kind of pairs alongside with gentrification, the resistance is so much that it just seems like, well, what the fuck is the point? Why am I still trying? I'm sure that every artist has had that on whatever scale and whatever way they kind of see it in their own lives, but especially Black artists and especially artists of color overall. I mean, we see music that has been stolen from us through generations that is now coming back, and it's like, well, we've drawn a line and you're not welcome to pass it. I find that completely and utterly disgusting. And I find it to be so discouraging. Like, so, it makes me feel like the one thing that I've had my entire life that's remained relatively consistent, and the one thing that's been my passion and my outlet, regardless of what I've been faced with, and regardless of what social issues I've been faced with, and regardless of what the world has thrown in my face, it makes me feel like I'm not allowed or able to express myself. Racism shows up in every aspect of our lives. And it took a quarantine, it took a bunch of people sitting in their houses with nothing better to do for everybody to realize that. That's all.
Yeah, no, I mean, you raised some really excellent points there. I feel like there's also I think, a really big divide between kind of like the UVA student community and the Charlottesville community at large. There seems to just be such a disconnect. And sometimes I worry that sort of like, the students of UVA kind of exist in a bit of a bubble, and they don't really sort of keep in mind that they're part of a community while they're here. So I don't know, it's something that, I don't know, I think a lot of people are kind of seeing that now, and I think it's taken way too long. AD Carson, I know that you maybe kind of have an interesting perspective on that as a faculty member and a performance artist in this area.
Yeah. On the divide between Charlottesville and UVA?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. I think that I appreciate that my composing mixtapes class this past semester, without being prompted by me, because like I said, stuff hit me hard, and I won't pretend that it was easier or better than it was or is. And so at the time that I kind of like tuned out and was dealing with, my own personal stuff, the students were really interested. And this is one of the community engagement courses. And so we're thinking about what we will do as a ongoing engagement, but also a culminating event where we wanted to work with 9 Pillars to have students engage with the festival. Well, it wasn't a possibility anymore. And so those students thought that they would use the release event for their mixtape to try to get whoever would come to that online event to donate money to the Charlottesville charities that were trying to help people out financially through the pandemic. And I thought that that was incredibly thoughtful of those students to try to use the platform to just say, you might have showed up to listen to this new music that we're creating, but here's this issue, or here's a way that you might be able to, you know, to funnel some resources to people who might need it. So your attention is being diverted to ways that you might be able to help right now, especially at this time where a lot of folks are sitting at home and thinking, well, what can I do? And I think that, and I appreciate even, you know, the folks with the local, like the PBS affiliate, they put on an event and asked people to submit videos to be able to have, you know, kind of like a concert at home. And as I'm sitting at home and, you know, feeling kind of shitty about everything that's going on, seeing that folks are able to think about the local, not just the local music community, but to think about the local communities and ways that music might be able to help to shift our attention to things that we might be able to do. And I do appreciate the comment that the person offered to say in the chat that says something about like music reflecting on the times. I hope that it's never mistaken that I don't think that my music matters. Like, I would be a liar to say that I don't think my music matters. And I don't think that anybody's making music thinking that it doesn't matter. I think that it feels gross to use the pandemic as a promotional opportunity. It's disgusting to do that. And that's one of the reasons that I think people might feel like we want to talk about the issues that are going on. And even if you make music that is about what's going on, this is not the moment to say, well, I got a song for that, please go download it. I think that what those students were doing was saying, we've got an album and we worked really hard at this, but we think that if you're here to pay attention to what we're doing, there's other stuff that you might be able to pay attention to along with the music that we have. And so that's something that I think local artists can do and a local scene can do, is to pool those resources and pool that attention that they might have in order to talk about the ways that COVID-19 has affected Charlottesville in these very particular ways that are, you know, that's doing harm in ways that we won't hear about because the platforms that people are generating a lot of attention through and to might not be paying attention to those folks who are hurting in these most profound ways.
And also, we're tired. We're really tired. We've been making music about everything going on for years before it was in the forefront of all of our minds. We've been doing this. This is our life, you know, as artists and as activists and as just genuinely decent human beings. This is our responsibility on this planet to be able to create this. But you want to know something? I've been yelling at y'all. I've been yelling at y'all, you know? I stay screaming my entire life. And, you know, I think I deserve a break right now, too. I think it's time, like you were talking about, you know, taking that time to sit with your feelings and taking that time to embrace everything that's going on so that you can heal. We need time to heal. As artists, we deserve time to heal, too. We cannot always be creating, and we cannot always be, you know, it drives you insane. It's just like when you watch too much news or when you know, consume too much social media, it becomes a point where you're so resonant with it. You're so intermingled. Your energy meshes with the energy of the world. And as an empath, which a lot of artists are, you just feel crushed. You feel so crushed, and music is such an intimate thing. Any sort of art is such an intimate thing to be able to create, and you are putting your soul into what you're doing. I can't put my soul into ugly right now because I see ugly everywhere in front of me.
Thank you for saying that. That was really powerful and really beautiful. Thank you. All right, well, I guess if we want to turn it over to the sort of audience Q&A portion for about the latter half of the panel. Molly has been moderating the chat, so if you've got any questions for any of these artists or if you've got any questions for all of us to kind of engage with, go ahead and take them to there.
I feel like we should be playing the Jeopardy music right now.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we need like some kind of interview. We've got a hey y'all.
Paper.
Very cool. Nice. Well, it looks like Valentina does have this sort of like this cool thought about like what it's like to be kind of consuming music. So I don't know if, or is Saber typing?
I think Saber's got something to say. For
Saber, you can, if you want to unmute, you can ask us.
That's a good question, Saber.
Yeah.
What are you risking in your day-to-day life to help support as well? That's a good question.
So I guess I'm not sure if that might have been towards Ceterus because we were talking about the social media presence earlier, but if y'all want to comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what you refer to in saying risking, but I guess if you're asking like what we've inputted, it's like mostly been in the form of like spreading awareness and stuff. But what we're able to give, we have given in like monies to like different groups that support Black Lives Matter and other kind of activist groups. Time as well, when the Charlottesville protests happened, we tried to get out there and do some shouting with them. And
moving to Richmond too. Yeah,
we've been all over the state as well, but it's mostly just been kind of investing time into that sort of stuff because
about self-education too. You know, really just put it like a living the mindset and, you know, kind of staying aware and really educating yourself through and through every day. It's kind of, that's I guess the most day-to-day life type of things because not much is happening outside these walls.
And even like, I guess, like you were saying, the most important part, at least for me, was learning and getting a bit better perspective on the whole thing, just so that then whenever I encounter someone in person or online with sort of opposing views, I can kind of bring to the table what I know, and every day that's growing more and more.
100%.
You all have been donating proceeds too. I know that's something that you've at least.
Yeah, all this last release goes straight there. Not much.
Cool. Well, it looks like
couple questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple questions going.
I guess we'll do Jacob's first since he asked first. Jacob Baker says, y'all were talking about how segregated the Seville music scene is, which is totally true. What do you guys think is UVA's role in that, and how do we do better?
Yeah, I think that that's kind of a loaded question. UVA's role. So I think that what does it mean to be in community with people is maybe like the better question. How do you ethically like coexist in a community with art and artists, especially coming from and living at, working through a place that has historically and, like in the current moment, extracted so much from that community. And asking yourself that question without creating an alibi that exonerates yourself, so that like you are implicated by virtue of your being a student at UVA, because you're benefiting from all of this extraction and from this kind of, I don't know if it ever becomes an ethical relationship, but there are things that you can do and maybe it starts with asking those questions and then acting on those questions about what it means to be in community with. And that's where, you know, like not just, I mean, even when I came here, I thought that it would be really weird to start a job without knowing what hip hop looks like, sounds like, who the artists are in this town. It's weird that I might have to ask the people that I work with to make that part of my job as well. But it's also understandable if you believe that your job is to be at UVA. Like as a student at UVA, then your job is to be at UVA. But if you're a musician and you live in this town, then what does that scene look like? And what are you taking from that scene whenever you decide that you're going to be the person on stage? Or what can you bring to that scene if you have access to venues? And now, like, if not like physical, you know, like in-person venues, what about digital venues? What about promoting artists who are making work about what it feels like to be in Charlottesville right now? So, you know, like, well, what does it mean to pass the mic? And I think that that's something that, again, this is what I hope that these community engagement classes are asking students to think about. And my hope would be that musicians are thinking about this as well. And not just with the circle of musicians that you're cool with, like the people who you've worked with, but about the other people who you haven't worked with yet. Or if there's friction, you know, how might your being situated at UVA contribute to the friction that exists? Because I know that that's part of, I mean, every hip hop community that I've been in where there's a university and there's hip hop representation, part of it is that there's a lot of resources at the university and there are fewer resources in the community. I'd be pissed off if those people wanted to come and get on my stage too.
I think I'm gonna take up from that if that's cool. I think the number one is trying to, especially when stuff, you know, comes back and it's safe for us to all be in person together again, trying to make sure that your venues and your spaces and your community is inclusive. And that really starts with, you know, if you reach out to me and you want to split a bill with me, I'm 100% of the time, okay, more like 90% of the time, because sometimes we got obligations in life, right? But I'm like 90% of the time going to say yes, regardless of if I've even heard you. And I'm going to spend that time to listen to your music, and I'm going to spend that time to try and get to know you before I actually get on a stage with you. We need to be fans of each other. We need to start realizing that in order for this to be cohesive, and in order for UVA to stop being one unit and the rest of Charlottesville to stop being a completely separate unit, we need to be able to bond with each other. And, you know, that starts, it can be so simple as, you know, like you see somebody on their social medias put out a new song, put out an EP or something like that. Just go and listen to it. It's not a shameful thing to be able to support other artists in your area. If anything, that's a beautiful thing, because it means that we are working together, especially when the music reflects the times, and especially when we are intermingling our music with a movement or with a message. It's so important for us to be cohesive. And that's something that I've never seen in Charlottesville. I've lived in Charlottesville my whole life up until now. I moved to Richmond because I couldn't stand that shit anymore.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, it looks like Remy from Nine Pillars is now on the call. If you wanted to chime in on our next question, Molly, maybe you can pitch us one of the ones that are in the chat live right now.
Sure. How about Andrea asks, in a time almost defined by isolation, what are ways that you have learned from, worked with your fellow artists recently? I think Harli and Ceterus are both pretty lucky. I think they live with their bandmates. But maybe you guys have switched things up too. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. Or Remy.
I can go. So outside of my bandmates, I have a lot of different projects going on with other people as well. And that has been really difficult for a while, even with the band. We were very lucky that our old drummer, who recently decided to part ways with us, we were very lucky that he worked in a space, actually the Sake Brewery in the Art Park, where we could safely be spaced apart with masks on in rehearsal. And that was something that was, we felt really great about, and, you know, how we were able to keep it going. Now, of course, you know, the rest of us live together. There's a new prospective drummer, so there's that. But reaching out outside and duo projects and stuff like that, it has been really hard to rehearse. Michelle and I, like I mentioned earlier, our project Perfect Storm, we actually just started doing Zoom calls for our songwriting sessions. So we were like going back and forth. And of course, the first time, like in the second time, it was really awkward and confusing to try and get into the habit of things. But we eventually were able to work it out, like, all right, I'm gonna play this part, and then you tell me what you think would be a good melody over that, and just go back and forth as if we would in person. So technology is our best friend right now. I really wish somebody would create something where it could be like a jam session with no lags, and we could all just be in our little Brady Bunch boxes, but this is not a perfect world.
Hey, Remy, how's it going?
Sorry, I'm so late. I'm at work right now. Yeah. Hey, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. No worries. Is there anything that you want to share with us? I know we have like 12-ish minutes left. We've just been talking about the importance of music during this time, or is it important during this time, and what we've creative processes during this time. I don't know if there's anything you want to throw in.
Well, you know, you get so late to the party. I would feel more comfortable just listening right now and inserting when needed. But as far as music and its importance right now, it's a lot going on in this crazy world. A lot of different people are feeling a lot of different things. Several different motivations, several moments of rage, several moments of education, and all of that thing is coming out in music right now. It's been a reset time, if I can say that, for a good majority of artists in the city, and I'm sure statewide. We've had time to look at ourselves and actually see what's been going on around us. And to those individuals who have seen it from the jump, from the beginning, to catch individuals up to our sound, through our vibrations, through our frequency and our energy, our creative energy. This is the key time for us to be those messengers through our music, and I think that artists are really utilizing that at this point.
Okay, I think I caught maybe not all of that. I don't know if maybe there's like a little bit of a Wi-Fi connection error, but it sounded like you were talking about sort of like the role of the musician as quote unquote like a messenger, and kind of just like sharing some of the things that, you know, we've all been talking about through this kind of like artistic form.
Cool. Do we want to go to the next question in the chat?
Yeah, let's go to, I think maybe we'll have time for about one more question. It's going on 5 o'clock and I don't want to keep it up too long.
Yeah. I guess we'll go with Mary Gardner's question. MG asks, how do y'all see the state of music education in Charlottesville? What does it mean for community to have a thriving community of young artists?
I just think it's incredibly important, 100%. Like, and all on the, like the cheesiest way possible. Like, they are the next generation. So, like, you know, bolstering that opportunity and like keeping you know, resources going towards that even now when, you know, it's harder to do more in-person lessons. I don't know how the MRC is operating, but I know that I was volunteering there until like they stopped doing things and now they might be back, I'm not sure. But like places like that, like really, they still have a lot of resources and really funneling them towards the youth and actually getting lessons is a really big part of keeping a community not just like active in its kind of participation in itself, but also just for the future too. You know, making sure that the people coming up don't have to have these same conversations. Like these are already conversations that they've had and that they're coming into the music scene and growing up with, like, this is just a given. It's not like, oh, then maybe we should, I don't know, have a conversation about representation. And no, like this is like 100% the idea going forward. So in addition to kind of just, you know, keeping lesson type resources up, I know that I've personally done some Zoom lessons online for guitar and that's been like no problem. I mean, obviously you can't play together, but like Harli says, it's like, you know, you can just talk back and forth and be like, hey, play this. And then, yes, you got it. But big part of that is also just kind of keeping the, you know, the social state of those resources up and running as well, you know, keeping that right air on the lessons that we're given and stuff. But yeah, big part of the community for sure to be moving forward with a good solid group of young artists.
Yeah, and also I think moving forward, kind of going back to the segregation issue, I feel like there's a lot in Charlottesville that's tailored towards either a classical music education or Appalachian music education. And I mean, it's great that, you know, the Front Porch hosts like bluegrass jams and teach your kids how to fiddle and all that stuff, but I don't really see any kind of classes tailored to young children for like, here's how to make a beat, here's how to like write a rap, here's how to actually make like a different kind of music. And so then it just kind of keeps funneling everybody into the same taste of music that ends up encompassing all of Charlottesville. But I think hopefully moving in the future, once, you know, people can start meeting in person again and everything, I would like to see that kind of diversity in music education come up a little bit more.
So MRC is actually functioning by appointment right now. They were able to open back up and, you know, I talked to Ike, because I actually worked at the MRC before we moved. I talked to Ike, you know, in the 812 rally in the park thing. And, you know, he was talking about how the summers are really a dead time anyway, but now it seems like it's more dead because kids aren't really leaving their houses. Their sleep schedules are all messed up, and it's a whole ordeal to try and get them out anywhere. So, you know, they're trying to operate as safely and effectively as possible. There's still virtual lessons going on. Actually, now that we're settled in the new space, I was thinking about reaching out to Lucas about picking back up on my old lessons, just because I feel like it's so important for us to be able to reach. And one of the great things about defunding the police is that it leaves more money in the budget for education and thus music education. Like, we need to stop depriving people of the arts. It's so important and therapeutic, especially for those of us who were maybe more at risk than others. So there's that. One thing I will say I've noticed with my lessons and music education, you know, all of that here recently is a lot of kids don't really have a safe and quiet, focused space to be able to retreat to for lessons or for anything else. So when the quarantine hit and the MRC closed, I lost a lot of students, you know, and I'm still trying to keep in contact with their parents and make sure that they're still doing as much as they can right now and still growing. But it's definitely really difficult, I imagine, for those who are living in apartments and, you know, smushed in place with their families. Everybody's working from home. It's a whole different ballpark. It's a whole different ball game now.
I think I was just going to say that, you know, I don't know much about what music education looks like in Charlottesville. But I think that, you know, I do know that a community that puts resources, I mean, that it's important for any community that says that it wants particular things to put resources into those things to make sure that they happen. So it's one thing to say that you want music education for young folks, or that you want diverse music options for young folks. It's another thing entirely to pay folks to do that work, or to, you know, make that work available to students in ways that they can engage it in the same ways that they engage the things that are available. And so that's not a thing that you need to be face-to-face with people in order to start working on. That's something that can be happening right now, so that when we are able to meet folk face-to-face, we can actually have these kinds of options that are available. And then again, as you know, you talk about like there being limited options for people, or there being limited engagement from particular subsections of the community. Yeah, like we can work on changing that, or changing the, you know, the structures that make those things available, or make those changes that we want, that we say we want right now. Like, I think that that's definitely a thing that we should be thinking about. And I hope that what I'm laying out is not like, you know, it has no implications on Charlottesville, because everybody's already doing that work. If they aren't, then yeah, like this is a perfect time to be doing it. But, you know, as I said before, I don't know. I'm just speaking, you know, I guess like in kind of a purely hypothetical.
I also want to chime in. That was really great that you tied into that next question: how should musicians become compensated and funded? Music educators as well. And also, let's talk about the qualifications that it takes to become a music educator, aside from somewhere like a nonprofit such as the Front Porch or the Music Resource Center. A lot of people don't have the funds, and a lot of people don't have the ability to go through and get a college education in music, but they'll get the exact same knowledge learning through experience. I think there are a lot of the time, I think that there are, you know, so many people who are just kind of cast out from being music educators, when in actuality, there's some of the people who are the most qualified and have the most experience to back it, but they're just kind of shut out. And, you know, that's one of the very many other ways that systemic racism affects us all.
Definitely, yeah, definitely an important thing to consider is kind of what we as a society see as like the right qualifications, quote unquote. I think that's really, thank you for bringing that up. I was worried we weren't going to have time to approach that question before we ended. We're about 1 minute to 5 here, and since the time for the panel was 4 to 5, I don't want to keep y'all for too long. But huge thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing your perspectives. If you could drop a link in the chat to somewhere where we can like access your music and kind of, you know, be able to sort of see what y'all are about. This is, I think, I really appreciated getting to talk to you all, and I'm sure that I'm seeing a lot of thank yous in the chat. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate all of you guys for showing up too. It was a great conversation.
I just wanted to thank Annie and Molly for moderating this, our 2 WXTJ co-directors this year, and doing a bang-up job for your first ever panel moderation. So, but thank you, AD and Harli and Val and everybody for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We've got another one of these talks coming up in about a month, last Friday of each month, and so that'll be September 25th, and that'll be a jazz themed conversation. We're sort of still sorting out exactly what it's going to look like. But yeah, if you want to check out Harli's stuff, she's got her links in the chat. Val just did a Spotify link, so we'll post those to the Facebook event as well if you happen to find us through that means. Yeah, so thanks again, everybody, for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a nice day.
Have a nice